Picture this, right? You're sitting in a dimly lit room. The glow of a screen is just sort of washing over you.
Right. Headset securely on, I'm guessing.
Exactly, headset on. And you have been playing Call of Duty with the exact same squad of guys every single night for, I don't know, nearly 15 years.
That's a long time to play with one group.
It is. And the crazy thing is, you don't even know their real names. You have never met them in person, like ever.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But in those quiet moments, between the chaotic firefights and the respawn screens, you're talking about your kids, your marriages.
The heavy stuff.
Yeah, the real heavy stuff that actually shapes a life, career failures, all of it. And there's this one guy in the lobby.
Okay.
You only know him by his gamer tag, which is Bounce.
Bounce. Love it.
Right. And Bounce has this habit of just casually dropping the kind of profound, life-altering advice that completely stops the rest of the squad in their tracks.
I could totally picture this. Like out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And it gets to the point where the guys finally just demand, they're like, Bounce, you have to write a book.
Honestly, it's an incredible origin story.
It really is.
Because it just strips away all that, all the academic pretense we usually associate with philosophy,
Totally.
This isn't someone sitting in some ivory tower theorizing about how humans supposedly should behave.
Right, right.
It's a guy in a gaming lobby who spent decades quietly observing how humans actually behave.
Exactly. And that guy's private notes, which is basically a literal survival guide written over 20 years to keep his own life from going off the rails, is the exact source material we are cracking open today.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. It's a text called My Compass Not Every Year. And the goal for this deep dive is to extract the absolute most potent nuggets of self-mastery from it.
Yeah, self-mastery, social intelligence, all of that.
Right. To give you, the listener, a set of tested bearings to help navigate what is undeniably a very noisy world.
And I think the crucial context here is the author's vantage point.
Tell me about that.
Well, he explicitly notes that he approaches life with a slight distance.
A slight distance.
Yeah, and he isn't detached or unfeeling, right? Rather, he has cultivated this deep discipline of studying patterns.
Watching how things work.
Exactly. He watches how people move, how power operates, and how ego inevitably just gets in the way. It's a discipline born from really extreme, careful observation.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we want to talk about navigating the world, the author makes a brilliant point right out of the gate.
Oh, about controlling the internal stuff first.
Yes. Before you can deal with the chaos out there, you have to secure the only terrain you actually control. Your own mind.
Right.
He anchors this internal control with a very personal North Star, basically a dual lens filter based on his parents.
The mom and dad filter. I love this concept.
It's so good. When faced with a difficult choice, he asks two specific questions. What would dad do? And what will mom think?
That dual lens is doing an enormous amount of psychological heavy lifting.
How so?
Well, if you only rely on the dad question, you might become, rigid.
Just too hard all the time.
Right. It pulls you toward responsibility, toward having a backbone and standing firm against opposition.
Yeah.
But if you only rely on the mom question, you risk becoming overly accommodating.
A pushover, essentially.
Exactly, because that question pulls you toward empathy, conscience, and, humanity.
He even states his ultimate goal is to see the world through my mom's rose-colored glasses.
Which is fascinating when paired with the dad filter. It creates this perfect, necessary tension.
It balances out.
Yeah. You build the strength and fortitude to withstand the harshness of the world, specifically so you can afford to look at it with empathy and optimism.
Soft enough to understand people, but strong enough not to be broken by them.
That's beautifully put. And that tension really sets the stage for his rule on rejecting circumstance.
Right. The text warns us never to let conditions or, momentary setbacks define our identity.
Because if you let the external world dictate who you are...
Like saying, I am a failure because this business failed.
Exactly. You just handed over your ultimate authority.
You gave away all your power.
Yep. And tying right into maintaining that authority is his really sharp warning against the trap of taking sides.
Oh, this part was brutal.
Yeah.
He calls choosing a side the lazy man's version of thinking.
It is brutal, but it's true.
But how exactly does choosing a side make you lazy? I mean, people take sides all the time.
Because taking a side is basically a form of cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading, okay.
Yeah. The moment you align completely with a tribe or a political faction or even a corporate clique, you just stop evaluating the mechanics of a situation.
You just let the group do the thinking for you.
Right. You adopt the group's default response. The author urges us to abandon sides and simply decide what is right versus what is wrong in each isolated instance.
Which takes way more energy.
Tons more.
Yeah.
Doing that requires you to evaluate incentives, read the data, and face the consequences on your own.
Without the psychological safety net of a group identity. But doing the right thing independently creates a lot of friction, which leads to a principle that really challenged my default thinking.
The walking away part.
Yes, the power of walking away. We are so conditioned by modern hustle culture to believe that endurance is the ultimate virtue, you know?
Stick it out, never quit, grind through it.
Exactly. But the author argues that sometimes walking away is the cleanest form of strength.
Because staying in a toxic or misaligned situation just to prove to yourself or others that you can endure it.
That's not strength.
No, it's often just masochism driven by ego.
But how do you differentiate between walking away from chaos to protect your peace and just, I don't know, quitting because things got hard?
It comes down to friction versus misalignment.
Friction versus misalignment.
Yeah, things getting hard is friction. And that's necessary for growth. You push through friction.
Right, that makes sense.
But misalignment means the fundamental values or reality of the situation run counter to your internal compass.
You're just fundamentally in the wrong place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you are staying just because you assume things will magically change, you are falling into another trap the author identifies.
Oh, the quiet errors.
Yes. He describes assumptions as quiet errors.
That perfectly captures how insidious they are. Quiet errors.
They really are insidious. Biologically, our brains make assumptions to save energy, right?
Sure.
Real-time processing of new information is calorically expensive, so we use old patterns, biases, and fears as shortcuts.
So when you assume, you aren't dealing with reality.
Nope. You're interacting with a ghost you invented to make the world easier to process.
Oh, wow.
Refusing to assume forces you to pause, verify, and actually look at what is right in front of you.
And that pause prevents you from just settling for whatever is easiest. There's a line in the text I literally can't stop thinking about.
Which one?
He says, "Love the one you with is a song, not a solution."
Oh, yeah. That's a great line.
To visualize the mechanics of this, imagine you're on a long road trip, you're hungry, and you pull off at the next exit.
Okay, tracking with you.
And you eat at this greasy, subpar burger joint that you don't even like just because it happened to be right there.
Exactly. You are trading intention for immediate comfort.
Yeah.
And then you try to justify it by calling that sheer convenience destiny.
It's destiny, right.
But proximity is not compatibility. Whether it's a job, a relationship, or a city, settling for the path of least resistance means you are letting inertia make your life choices.
Which is terrifying when you think about it.
It really is.
So reclaiming your agency works perfectly when you're alone in a room.
Sure.
But the moment you step outside, your pristine internal compass immediately collides with the chaotic, unpredictable agendas of other people.
Other people are always the wild card.
Always.
Yeah.
So how does this framework survive contact with the real world?
That brings us to his rules for navigating the social ecosystem. And the first rule is a profound baseline reframing.
Let's hear it.
People are distinct, not difficult.
Distinct, not difficult.
Right. Everyone you meet is operating under an invisible architecture. There are historical traumas, there are blind spots, there are specific incentives.
So when you accept this structural reality, you stop expecting people to react exactly the way you would.
You stop projecting your own internal logic onto a completely different operating system.
That is so freeing.
It is. And if you want to actually read someone else's operating system, the author advises using silence as a strategic tool.
Ah, yes. He explicitly says, don't be the first voice in the room.
Which is hard for a lot of people.
Very hard.
Yeah.
But the first voice always exposes its hand. It reveals its assumptions, its biases, and its emotional temperature before gathering any baseline data about the environment.
It's all about reading the room. He says you need to quietly map out the where, the who, and the why.
The where, the who, and the why.
Exactly. If you can grasp those 3 data points, the hidden ecosystem suddenly lights up.
You start to see the unspoken tensions.
Yes, who really holds the leverage and the actual agendas hiding behind all the pleasantries.
And once you start seeing those real agendas, you have to brace yourself for an uncomfortable truth.
Here we go.
Yeah, the author warns that human beings, even friends, even family, are capable of lying, cheating, and stealing under pressure.
It's a harsh reality.
Wait, I have to push back on this, though.
Okay, go for it.
If you walk around expecting your own family or your closest friends to betray you, doesn't that just breed a cynical, exhausting paranoia?
It sounds like it would, yeah.
Right. How do you maintain any kind of healthy relationship with that mindset?
What's fascinating here is that the author isn't promoting cynicism or paranoia at all.
He isn't.
No, he is stripping away naivete. Understanding human nature means acknowledging that we are biological creatures who run on instinct, fear, and ego.
Okay, biology.
Yeah. When the pressure gets high enough, when survival, status, or financial ruin are on the line, self-interest can, and often does, override loyalty.
So it's less about people waking up and actively deciding to be malicious, and more about their baseline survival scripts taking over when they panic.
Exactly. And accepting this actually protects your peace.
How does it protect your peace?
When you realize it's just human software executing a survival script, you stop being entirely blindsided when people inevitably break character.
Oh, I see.
You don't have to take it as a profound personal betrayal every single time. You can view it as a structural failure under stress.
That makes a lot of sense. It allows you to navigate relationships with precision rather than constantly reeling from disappointment.
It shifts the emotional burden entirely off of you.
It really does. But because human nature is so heavily driven by that self-interest, you can't just passively observe forever.
No, you can't.
You need structural boundaries to interact safely without being consumed by someone else's agenda.
Which requires a firm grasp on the mechanics of agency and power.
Right. And the very first boundary the text sets regarding influence is super counterintuitive.
Don't tell anybody what to do.
Yes, don't tell anybody what to do. Influence built on force or demands always collapses.
Because it triggers the other person's ego defense.
Exactly. If you order someone around, you strip them of their agency, and their immediate instinct will be to resist.
So what do you do instead?
You have to show them how. Demonstration proves competence and transfers power without ever uttering a commanding word.
We see this in how he approaches conversational architecture, too.
Oh, I loved this section.
The text says you need to talk with people, not to them or at them.
Because talking at someone is a broadcast. It's a power move that, again, triggers defensive friction. But
Right.
how exactly do you talk with someone in a way that actually builds their agency?
It's about how you structure your sentences and your ideas.
Okay.
Conversational architecture means leaving intentional empty spaces in your dialogue so the other person is forced to step in and build the conclusion with you.
Oh, that's clever.
You ask calibrating questions. You guide the framework, but you let them place the final bricks. Once they help build the idea, they own it.
And while you're building those ideas, you have to adhere to his rule of one.
The rule of one.
Don't repeat yourself. If you are constantly repeating your boundaries or your instructions, you are actively diluting the value of your own words.
You are literally training people that they don't need to listen to you the first time because you'll always provide a backup broadcast.
Exactly. If they didn't hear you, it means they weren't listening.
And their lack of attention is highly valuable information about how much they respect your time.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Oh.
The author takes all these concepts of boundary setting and agency and links them directly to the concept of debt.
Debt.
Yeah. He writes, don't carry debt, financial, psychological, emotional, or otherwise.
Expanding the definition of debt beyond just money is a vital conceptual leap here.
It fundamentally changes how you view your obligations.
Absolutely.
If you've ever held on to an old grudge or maintained an unspoken boundary or carried unresolved guilt.
We all have.
Right. You know, it feels exactly like having 50 heavy background apps running silently on your smartphone.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
You can't see them on the home screen, but they are constantly draining your battery. They slow down your processing speed.
Emotional debt limits your freedom.
It limits your freedom and ties your daily operating system to past choices instead of giving you present clarity. You have to force quit those background apps to get your processing power back.
That is the perfect visualization of the mechanic. All that accumulated emotional debt just reduces your real-time capacity to navigate the present moment.
Yeah.
And taking that a step further, the text makes it clear that knowing when to tap out of a situation is how you stop accumulating that debt in the first place.
Tapping out isn't surrender.
No, it is a highly strategic withdrawal to protect your mental RAM.
To protect your mental RAM. I like that.
It is recognizing that continuing to engage with a person or a project would drain far more from your battery than it could ever possibly recharge.
So we've talked extensively about these defensive mechanics. Boundaries, tapping out, reading abindas.
It can sound a bit like we're building a fortress.
It really can. But if we look closer at the text, these boundaries are actually the prerequisite for forging healthy, clean connections.
Right, because strength without compassion just becomes callousness.
Yeah.
But compassion without boundaries inevitably becomes self-betrayal.
Wow, self-betrayal. That's heavy.
You must have both to maintain what the author calls the circuit of compassion. He states you must be prepared to offer a hand, which cultivates generosity. But you also must be prepared to accept a hand, which forces humility.
Because if you are the martyr who always gives and refuses to ever receive, you block the energy flow. You break the circuit.
And you suddenly make the relationship about your own ego, positioning yourself as the sole savior. Clean connections require a mutual flow.
He also redefines friendship away from shared history and moves it entirely toward behavior.
Oh, yes.
Friendship is about consistency and presence in the current moment.
Right.
But there's a specific dynamic here regarding how we view others that I really want to highlight for everyone.
Which?
The text states that you can respect someone you don't like and you can like someone you don't respect.
Yes.
That distinction is incredibly liberating. It means you don't have to force yourself to feel warm and fuzzy about an abrasive coworker in order to work well with them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the failure to separate those two concepts is exactly what causes so much social friction.
We instinctively conflate them.
We do. We think, oh, I enjoy this person's charm and chemistry, therefore I must trust them.
Or, I find this person socially awkward or annoying, therefore they must lack integrity.
Exactly. But liking someone is just an aesthetic reaction to their social chemistry.
Right.
Respect is an analytical reaction to their integrity, their conduct, and their reliability.
By separating the two, you stop trusting highly charismatic people who have zero integrity, and you start valuing steady, reliable people who might lack charm.
You keep the currencies clean.
Keep the currencies clean. I love that. And the final piece of maintaining a clean social ecosystem is the function of humor.
The author is super clear on this. Laugh with people, not at them.
Humor is an incredibly powerful tool. It should be used as a pressure valve to release tension in a room, or as a shield to deflect hostility.
But the moment you use it as a weapon to diminish someone else...
You reveal a profound lack of security.
Exactly. It takes far more situational awareness to lighten a heavy moment without making anyone the punchline.
Definitely. So we have aligned the mind, we've decoded the hidden social dynamics, and we've established clean boundaries for our relationships.
What's left?
The final piece of the compass is aligning your physical reality. Where do you literally place your body in the world?
Oh, the intentional geography part.
Yes. The author argues passionately for intentional geography. He says you should live where you are compelled to be.
Not where you ended up. Not where it's merely convenient, but where you feel pulled.
Right. Most people stay put out of sheer habit, unspoken obligation, or fear of the unknown.
But alignment means choosing a terrain, like a specific city, a specific landscape, where your mind clears and your instincts naturally sharpen.
Your environment provides the passive inputs to your brain 24 hours a day. You cannot afford to leave that to chance.
He also champions the disruption of travel.
And travel in this context isn't about taking a luxurious vacation, right?
Not at all. It's a structural reset. It breaks your autopilot.
How does it do that?
Well, when you are dropped into an unfamiliar geography, your brain just has to wake up. You can't rely on your assumptions anymore.
Opportunities to travel are quite literally invitations to meet new versions of yourself that cannot emerge in your comfortable everyday environment.
This raises an important question, though.
Let's hear it.
Why do we so often wait for the perfect time to move, or to travel, or to change our physical environment?
That is the million-dollar question.
The text makes a stark observation about time and space. Life will simply fill the space with inertia unless you actively claim it.
Unless you claim it.
If you wait for the perfect moment when all the variables align, you'll be waiting forever, while your static environment slowly dulls your instincts.
So, what does this all mean? When we look at this entire framework, from the internal discipline of the mom and dad lens, to the external boundaries of conversational architecture, to the physical requirement of movement.
It's all connected.
It is. Movement itself is the ultimate stress test. Can you maintain your internal North Star while actively navigating through a chaotic, ever-shifting world?
That is the crux of the entire philosophy, really. This compass was never designed to be a manual for fixing humanity.
Because humanity isn't going to change.
Humanity is going to keep doing exactly what it has always done, running on fear, ego, and instinct.
Right.
Instead, This is a highly distilled record of how you can see clearly, act cleanly, and stay oriented when the gravity of the world inevitably tries to pull you off your center.
It's about having the tools to find true north in the dark.
Beautifully said.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to hand the floor over to you for a final thought. The author noted that his philosophy was born from a lifetime spent watching the world from that slight distance we talked about earlier. Distance gave him the clarity to write all this down. What is the final takeaway there for the listener?
The author spent a lifetime watching from a slight distance simply to understand his actual place in the room rather than the place his ego wanted him to be.
Okay.
So I want to ask you directly as you step back into your day, what invisible power dynamics, what quiet resentments, or what hidden opportunities in your own life are you completely blind to right now simply because you haven't given yourself the permission to step back, stop talking, and just observe the room you are sitting in?
That is a question worth carrying with you. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Take a moment, evaluate your background apps, find your bearings, and remember, sometimes the most profound, life-altering wisdom might just come from the guy waiting in the lobby between matches thousands of miles away, quietly paying attention to the world.